That night was darker than ever. The silence, dense and suffocating, seemed to envelop the house as if even the shadows were afraid to move. But then a soft, melancholic female voice broke the silence with a call. "Anna?" The mother, frozen in place, heard her daughter's calling, but the sense of terror that gripped her body made her doubt the reality of it. That voice wasn't her daughter's. It wasn't her own daughter calling her. But where was it coming from? Who was there? The fear seemed to have taken shape in something far darker, as if an unknown presence was immersed within the walls of the house. Then the terror took hold of the mother, who began hearing the same call once again. "Anna?" The repetition of the voice seemed to gain a sinister force, echoing through the empty hallway of the house. She knew her daughter was in her room, sleeping, but the sound of the voice was so clear, so real, that her mind started to drift to the worst possible conclusions. What could it be? A malevolent presence? Or something even more terrifying, something she wasn't prepared to understand? The horror settled in uneasily, and the house seemed to transform into a place where fear and shadows walked together, waiting to reveal the secret the mother feared. That night, fear crawled into every corner of the house. Every step taken in the dark seemed to amplify the call, which now appeared to be coming from within the walls, as if the house itself were alive, breathing along with her deepest fears. She tried to calm herself, telling herself it was just her imagination, but the terror that overwhelmed her couldn't be ignored. Whatever was calling for her daughter was closer than she realized. And the question that hung in the air was simple but terrifying. Who was there? Who was calling for Anna? The dim light from the hallway lamp illuminated only part of the way, leaving the rest immersed in shadows. Then as she took a step forward, she saw it. A figure, pale and misty, seemed to float at the end of the hallway, the silhouette of a woman with long dark hair that danced with the wind, even though there was no breeze. Panic froze the mother's spine and she couldn't even scream. Fear paralyzed her, and the figure seemed to sink deeper into the darkness, as if the shadows themselves, in a move of their own, enveloped it. Terror took shape before her eyes. The figure began moving slowly, approaching her without making a sound. The mother didn't know if what was before her was a specter, a lost soul, or something far more sinister. But one thing was certain: it was not human. The air seemed to freeze with every second, as if time itself were slowing down, the tension in the environment growing with each step of the figure. Fear spread like a disease, and she felt her heart race, her breath falter, but her feet were still glued to the ground. Something terrible was about to happen, but she couldn't move. When the figure got closer, the mother could see its eyes. Empty eyes as black as the abyss, that seemed to stare into her soul, probing her deepest fears. The woman was before her, a ghostly presence, but at the same time, something even darker. Something that knew more than it should. The tension was palpable, the fear overflowing, but before anything could happen, the figure vanished. But it didn't leave. It was still there in the shadows, waiting. And the mother knew that this presence wasn't going to abandon her. Fear had now become something much more real, something that would never be forgotten. The worst was yet to come, and she had no idea how dark the abyss she was about to face really was. While the mother tried to recover from the shock of the apparition, the air seemed to grow heavier, more oppressive. The house, once silent, was now filled with distant, almost imperceptible sounds, enough to make her heart beat even faster. It was as if the environment was being invaded by something she couldn't see, something slinking in the corners. That's when she realized she wasn't alone. Not only was the ghostly figure there, but something else was watching her, something darker, more dangerous, more cruel. The sensation of being watched intensified, and she could no longer tell where the shadows ended and where the terror that surrounded her began. A metallic smell, as if something were decomposing, filled her nostrils, and the pressure in her chest increased. It wasn't just the fear of being pursued by an unknown figure. Now she knew she was being hunted by something much older, much more malevolent. The feeling that a supernatural force, an indescribable evil, was slowly approaching her, getting closer and closer. It wasn't just a solitary specter. It was a predator, a being that fed on anguish and fear. As the mother moved through the house, a fleeting vision of the figure appeared once again, this time accompanied by another presence, more faint but still tangible. The house now seemed to have a life of its own, with the shadows taking shape, moving of their own accord. The evil was there in every corner, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself in all its cruelty. And the worst part, she knew it wasn't just after her daughter, but also after her soul. The fear was becoming more real with each passing second, more tangible, and the woman no longer knew if she would survive it. The worst was yet to come, and she had no idea how deep the darkness she was about to face really went. That night, the terror finally manifested in all its cruelty. The mother, desperate, tried to find an explanation, but all she saw was a never-ending nightmare. When she turned to call her daughter, she realized she was no longer alone. The figure of the ghostly woman, now with eyes gleaming with hatred, appeared before her, and something even darker emerged from the shadows, grinning with an insatiable hunger. Fear took over every corner of the house, but the real surprise was just beginning. The daughter, who had seemed safe in her room, had disappeared as if she had never existed. What was happening? What was really real? The answers were swallowed by the shadows as the true horror revealed itself. Do you dare to enter this nightmare? What do you think happens to the mother now? And the daughter? Do you think she's really out of danger, or have the shadows already gotten her too? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications, because fear never stops spreading. Get ready for more stories that will make you think twice before turning off the lights.